My name is Michael Lair, and I'm the president and founder of Lair Architects Los Angeles. The shelters that we've designed are all transitional shelters. In other words, it's not permanent housing. The shelters that we've designed are all run by NGOs. We accept you wherever you're at, whatever condition, we're not judging you. So if you use drugs, we still respect you as a human being. I would say that they have heating and air conditioning, very important. I'm sure that's important in Korea too. They have windows, little windows that open up, and of course doors that open up for fresh air. And the other thing and they have some built-in shelves. The beds are built in. I mean, you can take them in or you can fit them in. You're not particularly safe, but you do have you have agency, which means you have some control over your things and your life, and you have autonomy. I believe that beauty is a rudiment of human dignity for everybody, for every human being, but it's more powerful for people who have little or nothing. So we use color a fair amount. You can use patterns that help define the space. So we use color on the ground plane. We also use materials when we can afford to, but we use color because it's an inexpensive way to dramatically change a sense of place, to create a sense of place. So it's how do you create a sense of place? How do you shape space? Use color to say this is an important place. So I'll say something about the three audiences I think these projects have to address. The first audience are the people on the street, and the staff too, but the people on the street. The first job we're doing is getting them off the street into safe shelter. Number one. The second audience is the neighborhood in which these are put. Like from some of our projects, from the street, you can't tell, but when you're in them and you see the tiny homes here and the regular homes behind, you say, oh, wow, that's a beautiful community. And the third audience, which may be the most important audience, is the culture. And how do you change the culture? How do you transform the culture? And that's where architecture becomes very important. The idea is to destigmatize. So we destigmatize the people, and also to destigmatize these places, to make these places more and more acceptable in different communities.
We are the Homelessness Policy Research Institute, and we are a collaborative of researchers, policymakers, service providers, and people with lived experience of homelessness, seeking equitable and culturally informed solutions. So whenever one of our main activities is to convene and to hear new work, new research, or it doesn't have to be published, it can be in the middle of the research process. We always invite voices from all of those perspectives. And we are unconventional as a research institute, as an academic research institute, because we practice this model of collective impact. So, where we have multiple sectors represented, and we're focusing on the voice of the people that are most marginalized. We're all seeking that in the way that our model is.
And so, for example, we learned that 75% of people experiencing homelessness in California are living in the same county where they lost their housing. So we have this idea that people are coming to California for our weather and our services, and it turns out that's not true. So at least what I'm doing now is kind of just condensing information from other really cool research institutions.
I was doing some research around, or right now I'm doing research around certain art programs to try and how that can be intersected with homelessness and outcomes for people with mental health issues, or using art as advocacy or as a form of therapy. There was one more project I worked on that I'm blanking. A transitional age youth, and also many youth who have been in the foster system, and different interventions to prevent them from becoming homeless.
You know, we have a relatively new mayor this year, Karen Bass, and she has really made it her mission to reduce homelessness. I hesitate to say eliminate, because that is would be very difficult. And she has declared a state of emergency over homelessness. So that helps to eliminate a lot of the red tape and the obstacles around building housing and you know, getting resources delivered to these people. So that's one big step. You know, afford to move into housing, and they have to return the vouchers because they're unable to find a home to use the voucher for.
Against people who use housing vouchers, because there's such a negative perception about homelessness, and there's also a ton of racism. So landlords, that's why we have done a lot of work focusing on Black and Latino and people of color experiencing homelessness, because it's so much more difficult for them to find places that will accept their vouchers.
Switch a lot of motels and hotels into temporary housing to prevent the COVID spread, and that's a program that's kind of evolved past the big outbreak in 2020 and 2021. So the counties or cities are buying these older motels or hotels, and then using that for housing because they're already built.
It's called Project Home Key.
Median rent in California has increased by 38% since the year 2000, but the minimum wage has only increased by 7%. So the amount people are being paid is not increasing, but the rent is increasing significantly.
The city of LA and the county of LA, both who have separate government structures, joined together to create LASA as kind of like a one-stop coordinating central organization in Los Angeles to handle homelessness. LASA doesn't really do that work, preventative work. We don't do a lot of direct service other than the outreach and connection to other agencies. We're more, like I said, an administrator, and then also a facilitator. The majority of the work they do is just connecting them to other agencies that provide more services. So the majority of what LASA does is a pass-through funding. So we apply for a lot of the funding from the federal government, even from the state, and things, and then we allocate those funds to other agencies. So a lot of the money, although we apply for it, they are actually the direct recipients, and they divvy that money out then to the projects under them. A lot of partners we have, for example, Department of Mental Health, Department of Health in Los Angeles, they provide more hands-on services to people. So we also have some partners like the public housing authorities for the subsidized housing. Vouchers that were being allocated, they're not being used. We're sending money back to the federal government at the end of the year because we're not using it all, even though there are still people experiencing homelessness everywhere. Just let us contract and rent out entire buildings, and then we can just move people in, because we're still using the money to house people, but we're taking out several of these steps of submitting applications, like to a certain project here. So they'll say, well, if you promise to rent out your unit to someone that's low income that receives a subsidy from us, we will provide you with up to X amount of money, a certain amount of money. You need to meet, obviously, certain standards to be able to get some of that funding. There are some shelters that are very private, meaning they, for example, churches, right? And a church might have a shelter. They don't receive any funding from anyone other than the people that go there. A lot of shelters are a big room, and there's just a whole lot of cots, right? A whole lot of just beds in the room. And at 7 in the morning, they wake everybody up and they say, you got to go out. And then at night, you come back and you wait in line. And if there's a bed available for you, you can have it. And if there's not, you leave. I've had so many people, and now I've had people go through, a drug rehabilitation that wanted to, and it worked.
이것을 만들게 된 계기는 저희 교회에서 어려운 홈레스들을 위해서 우리가 밥을 금요일 저녁에 밥을 제공하는데 밥을 먹으러 온 홈레스 중에 한국 사람이 서 있었어요. 깜짝 놀랐어요. 한국 사람들은 부지런해서 홈레스가 없는 줄 알았는데 그래서 내가 물었어요. 당신 말고도 한인 홈레스가 또 우리 한인타운에 있느냐? 한 20여 명이 있습니다. 여러분들 아니 뭐가 가장 필요하십니까? 버스 토큰이 필요해. 땅바닥에서 자면 너무 추워서 아침에 버스를 타면 몸이 녹는다는 거예요. 그러다가 방을 하나씩 얻어주기 시작했어요. 그러다가 우리가 다 함께 한 집을 얻어서 함께 살기 시작한 지는 2009년도부터 살기 시작했어요. 그래서 지금까지 한 150여 명이 같이 살았어요. 그리고 이제 또 새로운 노동 능력 있는 사람은 바로 취직을 시키고 또 한국으로 가고 싶다는 사람은 돌려보내고 100% 자유롭게 살아요. 단 하나 규율이 있어요. 뭐냐, 남에게 피해를 주지 마라. 또 며칠 전에 멋있는 구절 하나 만들었어요. 아침에 일어나서 이불을 깨면 성공하는데 그래서 이불을 깨라. 지원을 얼마든지 받을 길은 열려 있어요. 그러면 그 나라에서 돈이 굉장히 많이 대주는데 그러려면 시에서 원하는 규정을 지켜야 돼요. 그렇게 하면 한국 사람에서 다운타운에 가면 그 미천이라고 그래요. 주로 이제 내 친구들 이제 기부를 해주고, 그러면 이제 지금은 뭐 그게 돈이 안 들어가니까 왜냐면 뭐 먹고 사는데 있어서 큰 돈은 안 들어가요.
Bye.